Coming up on show 701, battery innovation is driving the EV industry forward. We'll tell you about Tesla's new plans in China. Plus, we're talking a Cadillac electric crossover, billionaire beef, Elon versus Gates. Tesla have been ordered to do something with their Gigafactory tree felling. You won't believe it. A new Fiat 500 full electric production line begins, and how many people are buying the Mustang Mach-E in dealers? I'll let you know. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily, the edition for Tuesday, the 18th of February. It's Martyn Lee here, and I go through every EV story, so you don't have to. Thank you as always to myev.com for helping make the show. Well, they've built the world's first marketplace all about electric vehicles. If in the USA it has a plug socket on it, and you're buying and selling and learning about them, check out myev.com. Well, Tesla is in advanced stages of talks to use batteries from CATL, that is Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited, that contain no cobalt. Zero cobalt is a big headline on its own, but bear with me, this story gets bigger the more we read it. One of the most expensive metals in EV batteries is cobalt. Now, they're cars that are currently made in the China plant, no more than a few hundred a week, but that will be scaled up. People familiar with the matter say that Tesla will be moving to a new battery chemistry, at least for the Standard Range Plus Model 3. Revealed in an exclusive Reuters report today, adoption would mark the first time for the US automaker to include so-called LFP batteries, that is, lithium, iron, phosphate, LFP batteries in its lineup, as it seeks to lower production costs amid faltering overall sales of EVs in China. Market definitely a little bit slower than it has been, although it was massively on fire. Pardon the pun, there has been an EV fire, but we won't go into that today. Tesla has been talking to the Chinese manufacturer for more than a year to supply these LFP batteries that will be cheaper than existing batteries by, this source says, a double-digit %. So we know we're talking about batteries here that have no cobalt. That is a big controversial issue, nailed, because some of the mining, although a lot of the big car makers have such a stringent supply chain that the really bad cobalt, as in the stuff that's mined with child labour, doesn't end up in cars. But it's still an issue for the world generally. So batteries with no cobalt is a good thing for that reason. Some context on the timeline, by the way. So I've looked back at previous podcasts that I've done. On the 5th of November last year, 2019, Bloomberg reported that Tesla had reached a preliminary agreement to start using CATL as a battery supplier for the cars made in China from, they described at the time, early 2020. Let me just check the date. Yeah, that works. Now, 3rd of February, earlier this month, Inside EV said that Reuters was reporting that Tesla had added 2 EV lithium-ion cell battery suppliers to the equation in China, LG Chem and CATL. We already heard about LG Chem, and now the big news was CATL, and that was only, 15 days ago. Up until now, Tesla and Panasonic have been the 2 names that you put together. Tesla make the cars and Panasonic make the cells. Right? So there's already big news about them working with another battery supplier. But CATL was the interesting one. Let me take you back even further to an article that I found when I searched into the archives back in September. This was September the 13th last year. And it's all about CATL's cell-to-pack technology. And why is that interesting? Well, for a couple of reasons. But one of those, actually, is all to do with, firstly, a patent application that Tesla had published, which is for very similar things, and something that Elon said on the recent earnings call, that again, he says a lot of these things that don't get picked up at the time. Now, this wasn't a headline, but on the earnings call recently, Elon Musk was saying the way that we make our battery packs is purely because it's how we've always done it. So he said, and again, this wasn't widely reported at the time, stuck into my mind, but even I didn't go big on the podcast, so it's not as if I'm like, guys, come on, I've been saying this. It was to do with the way that cells are made into modules are made into battery packs. And Elon was saying, we do it that way because we've always done it that way, but actually, there are other ways of doing it. And again, I didn't fully appreciate what he was talking about until today. Working with CATL, working with a different battery chemistry. And the reason it's interesting is because this battery chemistry is actually less dense. So although it's a lot cheaper than the cells they have been putting in Model 3s, it's less dense. So that would mean you don't go as far, less energy density in there, the range would go down. But bear with me on this. The standard range plus Model 3, the battery pack design on that in terms of where the actual modules go, the actual pack design, exactly the same as the long range Model 3. There's just some empty space, as far as I understand it, some empty space inside the lower range Model 3. So if you're using a battery chemistry, here's my question to battery experts, and I'm not one. If you're using a battery chemistry that is going to mean lower range, my tiny brain says, well, you can just put in more of those cells in the space that's available in the standard range plus one. Okay, it'll make the car a little bit heavier, and that affects range as well. And that could be what they're doing. Like I say, I'm just a guy that talks on a podcast. I need to refer to some battery experts to help me out with this. So going back to September 13th, as I mentioned a moment ago, CATL issued a statement, which again wasn't widely picked up at the time. China's largest automotive lithium-ion battery maker, unveiled its focus on this cell-to-pack technology to improve efficiency, to lower the running costs, and to safely and efficiently manage battery cells mounted in an EV. What happens is the cells are made into the modules are made into battery packs. Generally, a cluster of cells makes up a module, and a cluster of modules makes up a pack. Ultimately, each EV is installed with one battery pack. This new technology, with CATL and Tesla, skips the middleman, if you like, the process of battery modules. It allows the cells to be directly integrated into battery packs. That increases the mass energy density by up to 15%. It improves the volume efficiency by up to 20%. And it reduces the amount of parts for battery packs by, get this, up to 40% fewer parts. And these type of batteries can increase the energy density from, at present, about 180 watt-hours per kilogram to nearer 200, and actually at the cell level up to about 240 watt-hours per kilogram. So maybe, because of this new way of making cells into battery packs directly, maybe you wouldn't have to do what I just speculated a moment ago and fill up the empty space, as it were. I'm sure it's not empty, but, fill up the space in a standard range plus Model 3, because this new way of making batteries means that you can just get more cells in the same space. So, as always in these kind of cases, I refer to people that I follow online. The experts, Dr. Max Holland, said that Reuters reports this CATL and Tesla collaboration today with new LFP chemistry for Shanghai-made Model 3s, less expensive, longer lasting than the current batteries. And although less energy dense, he says, enough energy for a Model 3 standard range plus, LFP has lithium, iron, phosphate, oxygen, and a bit of manganese. All of those are what he says unconstrained minerals. The only slight challenge is for lithium mining to ramp and scale to match the growing demand. Others are very abundant. No nickel in LFP cells. No cobalt either. Now, James Frith, another energy battery expert who I follow, you could probably fit a 50 kilowatt hour pack of LFP cells, he says, inside that. Around 11% heavier, he's calculated. And Simon Moores, someone else again who's an expert in minerals and supply chains and things, says that while the LFP lithium-ion batteries are heavier and have a lower range, it's a sensible cost move for Tesla EVs, particularly the ones made in China. Wowzers. A big story today, and something that got me really excited about a big development in battery technology, but also, these kind of batteries are used in buses and things. They're also safer, by the way, I should add. So it's not a new technology, but a new way of making the batteries. I got really pumped up today and optimistic for the future, that there are all the time big breakthroughs happening, even with big companies like Tesla. I know BYD but use a lot of these cells as well. It just got me so excited that actually it opens up a whole new avenue, a corridor of development. And that is so cool for EVs, because remember as well that the pace of change in EVs and what you and I talk about every day is so fast compared to fossil gobblers that have had 100 years to evolve to where they are today. And actually, there's no real breakthroughs in combustion anymore. Little things here and there, but not really. And so that's why something like this can happen in a day, and your mind just goes like, oh my goodness, the possibilities are so cool. Okay, let's move on, or there'll be no time for the other brilliant stories we've got today. Cadillac is unveiling a mid-size electric crossover in April. Brand president Steve Carlisle told dealers at the National Auto Dealer Association convention yesterday the new crossover is going to be Cadillac's first all-electric vehicle, says Autoblog. Earlier this year, Cadillac teased the new mid-size crossover, telling us to expect it to come in 2- and 4-wheel drive flavours and to be offered as a global model car. The last we heard of GM's plans to electrify its luxury brand came in December, when he laid out an aggressive plan to switch over by 2030. Steve Carlisle said this, and I quote, "We enter this decade as an internal combustion engine brand, and we want to position ourselves to exit as a battery electric brand, so we have to manage both at the same time," end quote. And props to him for saying something in such a simple way that ultimately is the challenge that everybody who's not a pure electric maker has to deal with. They're entering a decade now. And don't argue with me that the decade starts in 2021. We're entering a decade now where so many of them are fossil combustion profit deliverers, and they're going to end the decade as pure battery electric profit companies. How they do that is going to be different for everyone. I can't wait to find out. Elon Musk seems unhappy about our next story. He has been tweeting about a fellow uber-rich billionaire, Bill Gates. Bill Gates' choice in vehicles does not please Elon. Bill Gates revealed in an interview with the YouTuber Marques Brownlee that he recently brought a Porsche Taycan, and that's his first electric vehicle, says GeekWire. Elon Musk, never one to hold back on Twitter, took to Twitter and said his conversations. He called Bill Gates, and his conversation with the Microsoft co-founder was underwhelming. That was the phrase he used, underwhelming, after a user questioned why Bill Gates didn't buy a Tesla and why he bought a Porsche Taycan. Shock horror, there is somebody in the world that doesn't want a Tesla. I know the fanboys won't be happy, will they? This is what Bill Gates said.
Tesla, if you had to name one company that's helped drive that, it's them. Now, all the car companies, including some other new ones, are moving super fast to do electric cars. Actually, the biggest concern is, will the consumers
get on board,
overcome their range anxiety? I just got a Porsche Taycan, which is an electric car.
Okay.
And I have to say, it's a premium price car, but it is very, very cool. Okay. That's my first electric car, and I'm enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, I have to follow up on that, because that's a car I'm super curious about. You don't see them nearly as much, but when you see pretty much everywhere is Tesla Model 3.
Yes.
I see them all over Seattle, you see them all over downtown, and if you're in LA. Is there anything missing from that experience? Obviously it's a fun car, but other than getting the price down and continuing to make a better product, is there any other reason not to go electric, I guess?
Well, the range, if you want to go a long distance,
right?
The pervasiveness of recharging, the time to recharge. Of course, you spend a little bit less on the electricity than you would spend on gasoline, and the maintenance cost is a little bit less, although the insurance right now is a little bit more.
Still premium cars, or premium insurance.
Yeah, and the repairs on, these mirrors that are really rich and complicated.
Yeah.
Fixing a mirror used to be $100. Now it's like $1,500. So, there's some work to be done on a few of these areas, but clearly, of all the climate areas, I'd say that one's the most hopeful.
For sure.
The thing that sticks out to me, okay, so he bought a Porsche, not a Tesla, shock horror. The thing that sticks out to me, firstly, Bill Gates is a switched-on guy. How has he not owned an EV already? How is this the first EV that Bill Gates has owned? That's incredible. And the second thing that sticks out, and it made me really, really sad, twice he mentioned range anxiety. And I never use that phrase on this podcast because it's a made-up phrase. It's not a thing. It's not real. People will argue with me that it is, but it's not. You can't put range anxiety in a wheelbarrow. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing. It's a construct. And I don't believe in range anxiety. Range anxiety is only a thing if you apply it to every possible car out there, because if you drive a fossil car until it runs out of fuel, you've had range anxiety because you didn't stop to get petrol. So when you own an EV, and maybe actually thinking about this as I talk to you about it, maybe it's just the natural thing that everybody will come to realize. This just happens to be Bill Gates, who's a very public person. Maybe we ask him in 3 months' time if range anxiety is a thing, and he'll say, no, of course not. No, I just don't drive it until the electricity runs out. the Porsche Taycan getting anything from 200 on the official test cycle, 200 miles up to 250, according to those YouTubers who were given access to a Porsche and have written very nice complimentary things about the Taycan. And depending on what you think the range of the Taycan is, Bill Gates has bought one, loves it. But unfortunately, all the attention is on him. Marquez gets millions of viewers, and he used the opportunity to bring up something really frustratingly. When I heard that, I thought, no! And it will make people think that range anxiety is a thing. Okay, moving on. Let's talk Mercedes-Benz building a new electric model car in northern Germany in the Bremen plant. They've been awarded the contract to build the new electric model, but what it is unknown as of yet. The EQC, their current production model, is made at the Bremen plant, is electrified. Production started for the EQC and was seamless, says Michael Peters, the chairperson of the Bremen Works Council. Currently, Daimler is struggling, not only because of having to cut jobs, they've had a recall of diesel cars that they've made in the last 5 years, about 300 diesel models globally, 100,000 in Germany alone having to be recalled. The EQA is an all-electric car. The EQA is planned for this year. It's the second electric model of the EQ sub-brand after the EQC. That's going to be built in France, so we don't know what they're talking about here being built at the EQC plant. But it's good to know that they are making plans for the future. Staying in Germany, a German court ordered on Sunday Tesla to stop clearing the forest near the Berlin site of Gigafactory Berlin to build the European plant there. Tesla were, if you remember, 4 or 5 days ago given the go-ahead, moved all the heavy machinery in to start cutting down the trees, which I should say, by the way, I see a lot of misinformation on Twitter. The forest they're cutting down was a man-made forest. These trees were planted to be cut down, to be used for wood. This isn't some ancient forest, thousands of years old. Anyway, don't get me on my soapbox about that. But they've been told to stop because an environmental activist group, according to Yahoo Finance, means the court ruling. The environmentalists went to court over the weekend, and the higher administrative court of the states of Berlin and Brandenburg comes after the environmental office gave the green light, and now this higher court has given them the red light. So Tesla had to down tools. As of now, they're not doing any more work on Gigafactory, and legal battles will be waged against the Gigafactory, inflicting serious and long-lasting damage, says this article. If they are going to be a serious place to do business, it must be sped up. If this kind of thing continues, by the way, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't listen to environmentalists, because, look, I drive an electric car and I make an EV podcast. I'm a pretty hardcore environmentalist. Lots of people saying that Europe can't do what China did. And then other people saying, yes, they can. They can build a factory in a year. This kind of thing can stop things for weeks and months, sometimes get tied up in red tape for years. And if Germany wants to be seriously considered as a possible equal to China in how quick they can do these big projects, they need to sort things like this out. Okay, from Germany to Italy, and Fiat Chrysler released an update about the progress on the electrification at the Mia Fiori complex in Turin. As it turns out, production lines are now complete for the new Fiat car they're making there, the all-new all-electric Fiat 500, undergoing pre-production product and process testing, says Inside EVs. The final version is going to enter series production this summer in June. And another project they're working on is to install 850 car charging points at the factory for employees, and also 700 of the Fiat 500s they're making, the pure battery electric cars, are going to be equipped with vehicle-to-grid capabilities to supply a 25 megawatts power supply back to the grid as part of a project that Fiat are working on. The original Fiat 500e was a compliance car in California. It was expensive, and they lost loads of money on every one they made, but it was a compliance car. Now, although the car will look the same to you and I from the outside, very similar styling to the Fiat 500 that we know and love, underneath, built from the ground up on an EV platform. And they will want you to buy one. Moving on, and the reservations for the Mach-E the 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E, to give it its full title, have been strong, according to Ford. But how many of them are being made online? Well, documents from Ford have just revealed the answer. According to a bulletin sent to dealers earlier this week in Southern California, 5% of people are buying their Ford Mach-E's from dealers. 95% are buying them direct online, says Cars Direct website. According to Ford, 92 out of 1,712 reservations were made in dealer. Just 92 done in dealer. Deliveries of the first Mach-E not going to begin till later this year. Ford has taken the unusual steps to actually manage their dealers very closely. For example, the dealers can't advertise prices underneath the MSRP. They are forbidden. The price is the price. Very much like anything else that you would buy. No big steep discounts from the dealers. And so that's interesting. How do you want to buy? This isn't question of the week. How do you want to buy your EVs in the future? We have done this as a question of the week. Maybe it's time to revisit it. But Mach-E reservation holders don't want to be going into dealers. That's interesting. Okay, let's do some energy news now. Stormy conditions drove wind to a new record high share of Great Britain's energy supply. Well, electricity supply. Energy is a bit different if I'm splitting hairs. At one point over the weekend, just gone, 56% of the grid was provided by wind power. The record level in the early hours of Saturday morning beat a previous high set last September, said analysts from Drax. According to the IEEGA.org website, Saturday was a new record for the highest share of power produced in a single day. 44.26% of the energy of the electricity came from wind power. It outstripped nuclear and gas combined, actually. The wind power records came as a storm blew across the country. Storm Kiara blew across the country, wreaked travel chaos, but gave us lots of lovely wind power. The UK has about 13.5 gigawatts of onshore wind, I think, and actually a world-leading 8.5 gigawatts of offshore wind too. Right, question of the week this week. Are you happy to pay extra for add-on features or apps for your EV after you've bought it? EVs are by essence connected cars. Recently we've seen Tesla turning off features on second-hand cars or even cars that come back to Tesla and get sold 2, 3, 4 times. They will turn off things like the autopilot package, full self-driving, and then sell it on again as a used car from Tesla and make those buyers pay for it again when the original buyer did it. That's fine. That's what they do. They've been turning off supercharging recently on cars, but also turning on features like rear heated seats for those that didn't have it for an extra $300. How do you feel about all this? Are you happy to pay extra for add-on features or apps that, after you've bought the car, can change the car that you have? And who really owns that car? If Tesla are able to turn features on and off, even without you knowing, if they remove supercharging capabilities, for instance, do you own the car? Are they in charge of the car? Let me know what you think about this whole thing. You can email me hello@evnewsdaily.com or leave a comment on the YouTube show. Thank you to 236 patrons of the podcast, and your generosity means that I get to make this show every single day. Check out Patreon, patreon.com, patreon.com/evnewsdaily. Thank you to my premium partners of the show, and a new name was added yesterday. The guys at Brightsmith Group, Adam and Tommy at Brightsmith. Brightsmithgroup.com for clean tech talent just signed on to be a sponsor of this podcast. Premium partners Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby and Avid Technology as well. There are 700 previous shows in the archive, and if you want to come and say hi on socials, just search EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. And remember, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.